I have never seen a movie so much bank on its marketing, telling you this movie is going to make you cry.
Hilarious.
If no one dies.
Wouldn't that be brilliant if they used that throughout the movie to pump up the stakes? You don't know who's going to die. Everybody feels like they could die in every scene, and then they all make it through to the end, and you're like, what? Wait, what?
That would actually be a brilliant misdirect.
Hey,
here we are,
on our way to go see Guardians of the Galaxy 3, You Will Cry. The only film thus far that I can recall whose advertising seems literally based on, this will be sad, someone will die, you will feel upset. Like, that's basically what, since the first trailer, it's like, there will be funny stuff, but also a lot of really upsetting stuff. And probably either Rocket or Star-Lord will die.
Quickly do predictions. I think Rocket's probably the most likely candidate. I'm not so sure about Star-Lord. He might be more one they want to keep in their back pocket.
There were shots in the trailer, it looked like, of a bunch of people walking and carrying his body, but that could be a fake out, you know?
Exactly. We've made a lot of comparisons between this and the Star Trek trilogy of 2, 3, and 4. What with Gamora having a very similar return to Spock.
So I was going to ask you that. So Adam Warlock, I know almost nothing about him. Okay, actually drop off the almost, because I'm more of a DC guy.
I love Adam Warlock because he is 100% filled with rage at all times, and I find that really funny, in the 70s version at least.
In the comics, you had said, and I remember only because he was teased at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and also, you know, minor spoilers, included in the list of Happy Meal toys for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. so I assume he's going to be here. And you'd said that he lived in the Soul Stone or something.
And he had a Soul Stone in his forehead. He has like a stone in his forehead. In this one, I guess it's just going to be, it's just there for decoration.
Right. So he was another vision.
Sort of.
Initially.
I think so. I might be getting that wrong.
But
he possessed the Soul Stone.
He is integrally connected to the Soul Stone.
Yeah, in the comics.
And Gamora died to retrieve the Soul Stone. Do you think they're going to leverage that connection in some way to Deus Ex Machina her old memories?
Right. It's sort of do exactly what they did with Spock and just reintegrate her memories from the Soul Stone. But I don't think so. I think there's not going to be any Infinity Stones in this whatsoever. I feel like they've worked really hard to try to be done with that chapter. I think it's going to be just a new Gamora that comes around to being part of the team again.
So you don't think that the old version is going to be?
No, I don't.
I just keep feeling like the Adam Warlock connection is perfect to if nothing else, just give her a view, like Loki, you know, in the Loki series, got sort of a slideshow of how his life went. I could see them doing that, but I don't know. You know, here's something that's kind of weird. I feel like all the marketing has been on, this is the Guardians' last ride. I don't even know who the antagonist of this movie is. Like, I don't even know what the plot is. Like, what are they actually doing besides maybe dying?
I know only
and something to do with Rocket's backstory.
From reading casting announcements that the High Evolutionary is...
Oh, really?
Is a person who appears in the trailer, but you wouldn't know who he is from just looking at the trailer. You'd have to read this elsewhere.
Right.
So...
Interesting.
He's the only candidate that I'm aware of. Well, and then Adam Warlock himself probably will start out as the primary antagonist and then come around to being one of the good guys.
But the High Evolutionary, maybe they're going to come in, finally tie up the first season cliffhanger, the only season cliffhanger of Spider-Man Unlimited. I mean,
I don't know, I haven't seen that, but
it's on Disney Plus. It's kind of sort of canon with the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, like all the same voice cast, but also certain things don't match up. But Mary Jane is back, so you could say, hey, happy ending to that sort of unresolved ending. But then it's a different unresolved ending where Venom and Carnage clones are going to take over this alternate Earth on the other side of the sun that's peopled by animal hybrid people. I doubt any 90s esoterica is going to factor into this.
I don't know, but I assume the High Evolutionary created Rocket, and that's going to be the tie-in here.
My guess, which I don't believe is his comics origin.
I have no idea. And they've already hinted at him being created through, like, experimentation in the first two movies, so I do think that's probably really good. And it seems like there's going to be at least one other animal character like him. There was like an otter or something in the trailers that they've shown briefly, and then like Cosmo the dog,
right?
Who I think his origins are different, probably.
Well, her in this.
Oh yeah, her.
Apparently, he in the comics, but she in the movie because it's designed as a tribute to
the Russian dog. Yeah. Back to what you were saying, that I do feel like going into this one, I know the least about the plot of any Marvel movie, like in recent memory, like in terms of what's actually going to happen in the movie. I have like no idea.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah,
which is cool, but I don't know. I'm kind of anticipating not liking it because the trailers do seem like this is actually going to be pretty miserable.
Fewer than like 3 characters die, I'll be happy. You know.
Yeah, if we only lose 2 of them, then
yeah.
Tragedy has been a part of the Guardians series, like. Guardians 1, it's Groot. Guardians 2, it's Yondu. Plus, there's just a lot of angst about Peter's mother and cancer. And tied right into the ending of that one, which is, the first one, which is a gut punch when they bring that back. And then the heavily Guardians involved Infinity War, it's Gamora. That is kind of the formula, even though this one emphasizes that that's going to be the formula. It's sort of like, well, it's never not been for these movies. It's like a lot of laughs and then boom, punch you in the gut afterwards. It would be ironic if everyone made it out of this one and they actually broke the mold. And in fact, Yondu comes back even.
Realistically, I think Rocket and I think Drax are the two. I don't know, maybe he like gets to some closure about his family that was killed or something, and then he's done. You know,
that's interesting. They've never really. Guardians was so tied to Thanos.
Yeah,
and it's like Thanos is killed twice.
Yeah,
and Drax
never got to really.
What is his purpose in life now that he has been avenged? It's funny, they've literally all lost someone to Thanos or Ronan. Drax lost his family, Rocket lost Groot, Peter lost Gamora. Like, Mantis is the only one without any Thanos baggage, and only because she showed up too late. It's kind of hilarious. And none of them, like, Peter got to punch him in the face, and everyone complained about that. But none of them got any closure.
Stupid main Avengers had to take all the closure.
I feel like there are probably a lot of deaths and things in the Infinity Endgame, duology, where characters have not gotten closure. Wanda has gotten a whole TV series and a movie about it. By contrast, Drax has got nothing.
All right, well,
here we go.
Here, we're going in.
Oh, we're going. Spoilers first off, and that goes without saying. So nobody dies.
Yeah.
What?
So
and the shot of him being carried his body, that was just him drunk. It was the opening title. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, and you know what? Kept me on the edge of my seat. Every time anyone was in danger, just waiting, like, okay, is this the moment?
I'm sure what the advertising was trying to do. But yeah. Primary observation. This was a disgusting film. This was gross. Like
literally, not like metaphorically. Like it was literally yucky.
Yes.
There was goo and viscera.
People dying in really terrible ways. Some of the violence too. Like when Groot grew out of that guy, and
that might have been the grossest moment when Groot stuck his arm in a cyborg and grew tendrils out of the cyborg.
And some of the violence, like the guy gets stabbed in the thigh with a knife and then pivots on it.
And that's somehow grosser, even though it's just a sound effect. That's
it's just. This feels like I don't know how they got this in not as an R-rated movie. My kids have been asking if they're going to be able to see this. No, they're not going to be able to see this. Not for some time. It was a body horror movie.
It was and not just the violence and fight scenes, like the biological research facility base in space was just disgusting throughout.
Yes.
Like, every one of the High Evolutionaries' creations besides Rocket is the most disgusting thing you've ever seen. I mean, even the other three that are supposed to be cute are like cyborg abominations.
You know, I thought Lila was the least abomination.
Yes, and she gets the most FaceTime with them.
About them, because we're just kind of rushing through this because we're doing a shorter one.
We're on the clock here.
To me, this is maybe the most horrific of the three movies, but it's the one that didn't, you know, actually make me messed up like the other two did. But I think that's partly because the advertising, I knew I was going into this, you know, they were going to be trying to tug at my heartstrings, and I was a little more callous to it.
Bracing for it.
And also just because it was so obvious from the very first time they said it's good to have friends, that they were all dead. Right. They were all goners.
All of his three animal buddies growing up.
It was sad when it happened, but it was so predictable. And the part where he sort of goes to heaven briefly and is like, there is an infinite, that was the closest that came.
Yeah.
Just being like, you will come fly with us, but not yet.
He
but
like walks into the light. Yeah.
If it wasn't for the very predictability of the putting the arm and saying not yet. So I did find Peter confronting his mother's death and Yondu dying more heart-wrenching than this, but I really think it was only the execution of how far I could see it coming ahead, whereas both of those were kind of gut punches that I did not see coming.
Right, they catch you off guard a little more. Yeah, and we got a Yondu cameo in this, so...
Yeah. We were right about that. They even brought him back. So I feel like this one was a more linear, straight-through movie.
It was, very much so. Like, they weren't cutting back and forth so much between two different stories happening at the same time.
And they were cutting to the flashbacks, but those served this story.
The flashbacks were the main story of what's happening. The rest is just them going to a place to try to get a thing to help Rocket.
Right.
You know, the core of the story is Rocket's backstory.
I still feel like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was the better movie, but I also feel like only the second half of that movie is good. About the point when Baby Groot is bringing the succession of things that aren't the key. It really picks up about that point in the movie and becomes, I think, the best of the Guardians movies, which is impressive that it can be the best one despite only... I only like half of the movie, and that half a movie is still better than the other movies. Yeah. Which is sort of the way that I feel about the first half of Captain America: The First Avenger.
Okay.
This one felt like it was a more cohesive single movie. It just didn't hit the highs that one
Yeah, it was
did.
very even. 75% of the movie was them just trying to find a way to save Rocket, go get the thing they need, and then they can't get that thing, so they go get another thing. Like, he gets injured right at the start, and then that's most of the movie.
And he's the MacGuffin, which is how the other way that I knew that he was going to be sent back and they were going to say not yet, because it'd be really stupid to have the whole movie all about trying to save him. Yeah. The same way that I knew Peter wasn't going to die, because as much as this is a stupid emotional decision in the long line of Peter Quill's stupid emotional decisions, taking on Ego with no plan and punching out Thanos, and as much as I get that the Zune represents the heart of the second movie and his connection to Yondu, I get what it represents, but him dying because he went back for his Zune would have been an incredibly idiotic way to kill off the character, so I knew that they weren't going to.
Right.
Although when his face started ballooning up, I was really afraid that we were about to see an exploding head on screen.
Right, because
the movie had been that kind of movie.
All the gross stuff we've seen, I do love the running gag of, did that look cool? And then he comes back with this disgusted, bloated face. I'm like, did that look cool?
And of course, they had to do the Adam touching for Adam Warlock.
Speaking of Adam Warlock, I really enjoyed this portrayal of Adam Warlock as, like, his first appearance when he's basically just like a kid. He doesn't know who he is, still figuring it out. It really worked for me.
I was surprised to see Will Poulter, a name I know from Narnia, in the credits. And then we also saw Nathan Fillion and Michael Rosenbaum, which are literally both an iconic DC animated character, the Green Lantern and the Flash, that also was an iconic DC live-action character of Lex Luthor and the Peacemaker, and both made the Marvel jump.
Well, he didn't play Peacemaker, but he was in Suicide Squad.
What?
No, John Cena played Peacemaker.
Oh, really? Who's Nathan Fillion?
No, he was just like a minor character in Suicide Squad.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, directed by James Gunn.
Well,
so
my mistake. And yeah, it's doubtless a swap for James Gunn coming over to DC. But I was also just shocked because did Michael Rosenbaum even have a single line?
You know what? I don't think he did. He did when in the first scene he was in, he said something. I remember, but I remember looking at his face and I was like, they actually made the CG model, because he's like a crystal guy, actually look a lot more like him in this one.
But yeah, Adam Warlock. He was exactly like you described, always angry.
Yeah, he's just always constantly angry. I thought that they were going to introduce the mechanic that he has in the comics where he dies a lot and just gets reborn in his cocoon. It's a lot. There's a reason for it, and it would probably be too in depth for them to explain in the movie. But he kept getting into situations where you think he died.
Instead, he was just cartoonishly invincible, like the Guardians of the Galaxy usually are.
Right. He just kept getting crushed and exploded, and you're like, oh, so and he got stabbed, and then he's back.
When the guy shot Drax in the bio facility, I was like, oh, okay, well, are they trying to act like, oh no, he's gonna die? Because, do you remember the live-action cartoon that was the first Guardians movie? This guy's invincible. I feel like, except maybe for Mantis, they did go and basically give one moment for each character in the movie where you thought they were gonna die. For Drax, it was there. For Nebula, it was being on the bridge as it was exploding around her. Obviously Peter at the end. It was they really were playing a who's gonna die.
Yes.
Speaking of death, I really thought the very Guardians of the Galaxy thing to do would be to save the planet full of animal people.
Exactly.
I didn't expect them all to die. They saw families and children.
At the Counter-Earth, was it?
Which is where that Spider-Man Unlimited took place.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does make you take the villain more seriously, but
yeah. And he was a strong villain, and I appreciated that he was very Thanos-like in his methods, so it made it more personal for Gamora and Nebula. Sort of, this is a lot like what he does.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a good villain. He was a strong villain.
Yeah.
Man. So maybe a bit of a controversial take here. But I felt like this was definitely Rocket's story.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've had, I'm trying to remember what the other thing recently like this I watched before. Another ensemble thing where it's really just the story of one of the characters. I don't necessarily feel like they earned everything that they did with the other characters. It was a good story for Drax, and I liked how it ended up for him.
Yeah.
But I felt like Mantis going off and needing to find herself, there's nothing really in the film that led up to that. Gamora just sort of felt like a different character here. Like, yeah, I know she had a different future, but she's still the same person basically that we met at the beginning of the first Guardians.
Right.
And she didn't feel like that one. And her finding a home with the Ravagers, I don't know, it just didn't feel in character to me.
I do think it makes sense where they took her character, they just didn't explain it on screen, because she's kind of like out of time, like taken out of her time, plopped in here. She's placed in this situation where everybody around her is telling her that she's supposed to be this other person. And so she's basically like doing the opposite of that. She's like rejecting that and rebelling against that. Yeah, rebelling against the pressure to be this other person that she feels like she's not. So in other words, she just kind of took it to the other extreme.
It just feels like there's a lot of connective tissue there.
Yeah.
Again, with Drax, I feel like maybe him, even to the point of dancing, which he so deliberately rejected in the first movie, felt like, okay, but at least he's found a family again. There still feel like there are some missing pieces in his story, but there was enough here I could accept it.
Yeah.
But again, with Groot, he finally says, I love you guys. Oh. It felt unearned, because he hadn't had any kind of story arc in this he honestly hasn't had a story arc since Infinity War.
He deserves the same type of backstory that Rocket got in this one, with like where he's from and how he came to be with this group and everything.
Well, we know how he came to be. He broke off from some twigs when his father died.
Yeah, technically this version being the son of Groot.
But it was just, it felt like they wanted to send everybody off on their end of trilogy, disband the group, give everybody a finale thing. But they didn't spend enough time on certain characters' arcs to really justify.
Right.
Like Peter, I can accept that he's decided he's been trying to cling to things the way that they were. and he's now accepted that they're not going to be, and he's going to go reconnect with family. It's
yeah, and there's
some
enough
of it's
that.
there.
There's enough of that in this movie.
And Drax reconnecting with where he really belongs is, you know, with children and everything. Enough of that is there.
Yeah.
And certainly with Rocket becoming the leader, enough of that is there. But it just feels like with Gamora, with Groot, with, you know, Mantis, not enough of it was there to justify what they did with them at the end, except that it's the last movie and we wanted to do a thing with them.
With Gamora, at the start, she is dead set against being with these people, and all it takes is just one fun romp with them, one adventure, and then she's on board 100%.
And the way she stabbed him and everything, it really seemed personal. I expected her to say something like, you remind me of my father. Oh, and that was the other one. Adam Warlock. Okay. I didn't think he had enough of a character. Like, he was mostly a joke. Like, I expected him to be the one to take out the High Evolutionary, be like, you killed my mother or something. He felt like he did not have enough of a story to justify his involvement. I expected him, and I expected Cosmo, and I expected second in command from Yondu guy. I liked what we got, but especially that they were in the opening credits, the title group shot. I expected them to have a little more. I mean, I did like their scenes defending Nowhere. Those were highlights of the.
Well, I really felt like this. But I liked the last part of this movie, the last night of this movie, a lot more than the rest of it. Once Rocket's back.
Right, because they're not just doing a gross thing to get a MacGuffin. Then they're doing a gross thing to go kill a guy. But
right, that's more.
You know,
that's better.
At least it's not just a big MacGuffin quest, which most of the movie is.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the portrayal of Adam Warlock, but I agree that he was underutilized for what it seemed like they were setting up in Guardians 2. Like, he was there throughout this whole movie. It's not like he was suffering from lack of screen time. But what they actually did with the character,
and it felt like they were
impact the story a whole lot.
Preparing to do something with him at the start, with the scenes with him and his mother, but they didn't.
I mean, so
and then his mother died, and then they just didn't do anything, and he's still trying to kill the Guardians. Why is he still trying to kill the Guardians?
Well, because he works for the High Evolutionary, technically.
Right, but he hasn't put together that that's who just killed his mom. Like, it just felt like there's something to do with him and Peter both lost their mothers, or of revenge. It felt like they were supposed to do something with that.
I mean, I guess it's just more Marvel setting up stuff for the future.
I guess. They're doing a little too much of that right now. It's like, guys, this is the post-Endgame slump. You're losing viewers. You need to give us more payoff now and play less long games. Bring back White Vision. Bring back Adam Warlock. Do something with them now. Don't say, we're going to do something with them later.
I want to see White Vision and Adam Warlock facing each other, and Vision's like, I see you copied my gem.
Yes. But I really feel like they put in the whole heist in the biotech facility.
Yeah.
Just like with the colorful spacesuits and everything, to have a bright, flashy Guardians of the Galaxy style sequence.
Yeah.
Kind of like Indy getting the Cross of Coronado at the beginning of The Last Crusade. Because, like, a lot of the movie is not going to be our heroes doing what you expect our heroes to be doing. Right. So we're going to give you a sequence of that. We're going to front load it at the beginning so you can see them do their thing. And then we can go not do that for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of the movie after that is more, like, gritty, like... It's more Iron Man 3 than less Iron Man 2.
Yeah. And I noticed when he goes to Earth at the end, the colors are very desaturated because they wanted to draw a contrast with the really colorful Guardians of the Galaxy, like, space universe.
Space is colorful.
That's their look, and they wanted to make Earth look more mundane.
Yeah.
I think overall for me, I feel like in some ways, I like this one better than 1 because 1 just kind of feels... It just blurs out of my memory.
Once the original, at the time, it was kind of
groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking,
So I feel like I like this better than 1, but less than 2.
Okay.
And that it was a more cohesive story, but it just felt like it didn't serve the characters as well, except for Rocket. It felt like it dropped several balls. I didn't like how gross it was. I didn't like how many things felt like they were left on the sidelines or the cutting room floor. It didn't tell...
And it was 2.5 hours long. It's not like...
Yeah, it didn't feel like they made good use of their time.
I would agree with your ordering of them. I like 2, then maybe this one over 1. But it's like he made these two great ensemble movies, and then got to this one and got obsessed with this idea of telling Rocket's story. And it doesn't. You can't do both. You can't do an ensemble movie and focus on one character. And he decided to focus on one character.
And it's funny because it being emotionally anchored to Peter's story was the heart of Guardians 2.
Yeah.
Him and Yondu, his relationship with his father figure. But Rocket and Yondu had a strong story. Nebula and Gamora coming to terms had a strong story.
Well,
like, they didn't neglect the whole. And this one felt like it did a bit more.
They have to do these flashbacks to tell Rocket's story, and you can't have any other characters involved in those.
Yeah.
So that's you have to choose what you're going to show.
And Peter's story also in 2 was informed by having already gotten a big chunk of it in 1.
Yeah. So
both of those were reasons that this one had to just be all Rocket all the time.
As a Rocket Raccoon movie, I think it was great.
Yeah. They did good with their fake outs of making us think that someone was going to die several times. There was funny stuff, for sure. Especially, as usual, Drax and Mantis are the best.
There was some real tone whiplash moments where they're going from this dire, like, you actually think somebody might die, to cutting to a joke, then back to everybody's gonna die, and then back to a joke. Yeah. Like, in a really short amount of time.
The Phantom Menace climax problem.
A little bit. Only this was more in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's a successful trilogy. I think this probably works as a trilogy more than any other trilogy in Marvel.
Yeah.
Possibly Spider-Man beats it.
I think
Spider-Man's more consistent and solid throughout.
It brings it home to a successful enough place that you can be happy with where the characters are left.
Exactly.
But I think it is kind of weak in how it gets them there. It's mostly coasting on the momentum that the previous 2 films had built in terms of acceptable character journeys.
Right. Any final thoughts?
I think we covered it all pretty well. Gross. Yeah. Funny. I wish I could remember some of my favorite jokes, but there were some.
Cyborgs were a bit much. A lot of
body horror.
Cyborgs.
It's just gross.
Yeah. Probably one of the better villains.
Don't kill all the funny people. Yeah, no, it was one of the strongest villains we've had since then.
One of the most original and actually, like, intimidating.
And had a presence.
Had clear motivations.
Strongest Phase 4 villain, he says, having not seen half the Phase 4
I think you've seen enough.
We gotta come up with a sign-off for this podcast. We always just kind of meander off at the end.
Andrew and Josh will return.
Yes, because the Marvel is so desperate. Look, we know it's after Endgame, but we're not winding down. We're not done with these characters. If you like this, Star-Lord will be back. If you like this, so-and-so will be back. We're not ending, guys. It's still going. It's just another phase.
Real miscalculation with Kang will be back in the last one. I mean...
Yes. Especially with James Gunn heading up this new direction DC universe. I think they're starting to sweat. Like, guys, we may have ended things a little too well with Endgame.
I mean, just... keep making better movies and less not as interesting movies. This one, it falls on the better side, and Quantumania falls on the less interesting. Less better.
This one also feels like it just makes it over the line.
It's stumbled across the finish line, but
it's no Spider-Man, No Way Home.
But what I'm saying is it's above mediocre.
Yes.
And that's a compliment.